I right? Outside of the two content creators I've talked about in the past who have a history of making parody type music and one storytime animator that made 2 music videos, I've always been interested in talking about more music related media in this channel. I love music artists like Kanye West, Tyler the Creator, Rare American, Stylish Gambino, Joji, and Mac Miller, and I would love to make videos about them at some point, but you know, the YouTube copyright system in music are the perfect duo to make sure that your video never sees the light of day, just like with anime. So after thinking about it for a while, I decided that I should finally talk about somebody that makes music, and the first person that came to mind was a musician that doesn't really take himself seriously. I like to think that I'm smart sometimes.
That's a small scooter die, bitch!
The title or thumbnail didn't give it away. Today's topic is on the musician Oliver Tree, a 29-year-old American singer, songwriter, and comedian who's been rising to fame for quite some time now, growing rapidly in popularity, whether it's because of his catchy tunes, his exaggerated persona he plays,
Fuck you, Anthony fucking fartface!
the collabs with other musicians and interpersonalities that he's done,
I'll fuck you up, old man!
or his honestly pretty sick tutoring skills. Whatever the case might be, I decided it would be pretty fun to take a look at his discography and the history behind the man himself, and holy shit, I did not expect how deep this rabbit hole went. So join me as I tell you the bizarre career of Oliver Tree.
Okay.
When it comes to his early days, nothing much is really known about how Oliver got started with music. Since he still uses persona whenever being interviewed, you can kind of take everything he says with a grain of salt. Just look at him in the Logan Paul podcast. He just likes kidding around with people, and with that type of attitude, you can tell whenever he's asked something like this, he will often say something exaggerated. However, there is one thing that he did say, which, like I said, you can still take with a grain of salt, but this does seem like the most likely. Oliver Tree Nickel was born on June 29th, 1993 in Santa Cruz, California, and since the age of 3 has been practicing the piano, joining a band named Irony in middle school where he became the lead singer and guitarist, but nothing much is known about that. However, 2 years later, he did create his first known stage name, that being Criff. Oliver's presence online has been as far as 2006, doing dumb mental commercial parodies, digging around with friends, and doing bicycle tricks in the middle of nowhere. But in 2010, the first known video of Oliver freestyling would be uploaded to YouTube in its glorious, not great and sounding 2010 video quality.
I keep my mindset level, keep it in the gear for the fear of the pedal. And I don't have a car, yo, but that ain't stopping me. The only time I'm rolling is while I'm dropping.
Later that year in December, another video on that channel would be uploaded with Oliver using his Criff stage name doing a verse, and 2 other videos the year later of Oliver performing at a club, later creating on a rap group by the name of Mindfuck, but again, nothing is really much known of it, and it really did not gain that much traction. Speaking of performing at clubs, Oliver would later make presentations for performances for people such as Skrillex, performing so well that a local production company by the name of RNS Records signed a deal with him, but because they thought his music was too experimental, they dropped the deal. However, he would still make SoundCloud music, going by a different stage name, that being Tree. Around his college days, Apollo Records would reach out to him, and they would later sign a deal where he would create his first EP under the Tree name, that being Demons. Listening to Demons compared to Oliver's later stuff is like night and day, to where the stuff people know him from, you have this fun 1990s, you know, vibe to it. Demon feels more melancholic from a lyrical and instrumental view, yet it's strangely beautiful how dark but real it feels.
We find it hard putting things past us, tend to start running so they couldn't catch us. Some can't escape the pain, some endure, some attack us in the dreams, make us suffer more. Sometimes you know, sometimes you don't, sometimes your thoughts provoke assumptions.
Another one of his projects that came around this time was Splitting Branches, an album that would release a year later, and my thoughts on Demons could apply to this album as well. Much darker than his newest stuff, but hits close to home in terms of its volume and lyricism. But later after releasing it, he would focus more on his studies before continuing his music career, but would go through one final rebrand, and this is where we get introduced to the Oliver Tree we know from today. In 2016, Oliver's first song under his new persona would release on Spotify by the name When I'm Down, a song that has a sort of similar feeling to Demons, but with a more upbeat instrumental and a less darker message within its lyrics. That, and the fact that Oliver's persona Turbo blew up at the time thanks to Vine, both the song and his rebrand managed to become a hit. With that said popularity, it gained a lot of attention from Atlantic Records, and they soon signed a contract where Oliver would shortly graduate from college. From the looks of things, everything seemed to be going absolutely amazing. That is, until you realize that most of the record labels that signed a deal with Oliver treated him like shit for the majority of the time.
What? So like once or twice, I feel like I can forgive and call it just bad luck. But after 7, 8, 9 times, I have a feeling that there's some kind of shenanigans going on. Like, why do you continue to have these false starts? Why do you keep canceling
You think
your
I
album?
wanted the fucking album to come out 3 years after I signed with the label? The label is the one not letting me release this shit. You think I wanted to put out EPs?
Why?
That's the equivalent of taking your fucking book and having someone pull out a chapter and say, oh, well, this one will do, we can put that one out now, and maybe we'll put a chapter here. Only reason I did any of those fucking EPs was so that I could get budgets to make music videos. The whole thing is you have to give and take a little bit, and without these fucking things, if I didn't agree to do the EP, there would be no music videos. I would never have the major budgets that I was able to get, but it comes at a cost. I had to give bits of my body of work that I've been working on for 5 fucking years, had to give that up. Ultimately, this is something that has been a long time coming, and through the process, I have become so fucking jaded working in the industry that this is my last album.
So
Ultimately, let me just say this one more time, okay? Let me cut you off. Ultimately, this is my last fucking album I'm ever dropping as Oliver Tree. I'm done with this shit. The fucking record label can go fuck themselves. The fucking radio departments who just keep vampiring me and keep asking for more and more shit, they can go fuck themselves. All the fucking fans who I dedicate my life to giving them art and they talk shit about me, they can go fuck themselves. I'm done with this shit. I don't need it anymore. I put my whole life into it, and all I've gotten is fucking disrespect.
You know, heading into this video, I was kind of expecting Oliver to just be some guy that came out of nowhere and created a hit and just kind of go from there. But nope, he's been making music for a good while and has managed to be a pretty prominent figure in social media thanks to himself, his music, and the people he's collaborated with online. But hey, that's enough talking about the past. Let's talk about his first album, Ugly is Beautiful. Ugly is Beautiful had a set release date for March 27, 2020, but thanks to Atlantic Records and real-life events like the COVID-19 pandemic, it had to be delayed twice until finally releasing on June 29, 2020, with mixed reception from critics. On one hand, people love how unique it sounded from other musicians, while also loving its 90s aesthetic, but on the other hand, people were also considered this album to be inconsistent, both in its quality and its tone. So with that being said, I'm honestly really surprised that people don't like this album, because personally, I think it's really good. And now it's time for me to explain why by talking about the album itself and why I liked it. Call me Anthony D'Antano, the internet's first animated ghost music critic, I guess. Oh yeah, and by the way, I'm reviewing the deluxe version of this album. Ugly is Beautiful, shorter, thicker, and uglier. That is fucking disgusting, Oliver, you smart, disgusting man, because that's technically the full version of it. But to avoid any confusion, songs 1 through 7 are the new songs added to the deluxe version, while songs 8 through 21 were from the original Ugly is Beautiful. You got that? Good. The best way I could really describe this album is Oliver being himself. While at first that statement seems kind of confusing, the more you listen to the album, the more that statement makes more sense. The major themes within this album are those having to do with neglect and feeling different, and I feel like this is shown off very well within the structure and lyrics within each song of the album. For example, the song Alien Boy. It has a fun and catchy beat to it while also having interesting lyrics about how he feels different from others, and just like the title suggests, he sees himself more like an alien, as shown within the first verse of the song.
I fell down to earth from 100 miles away, and somehow I still make it work. But it's overrated and somehow played out. 3 doors down so you can't ignore it. I'll hunt you you down like a Tyrannosaurus. My teeth are sharp like a great white shark. Let me taste that flesh is my favorite part.
Until finally expanding in the second verse about he's trying his best to make it on his own.
10 doors down, but you still can't see me. I talk a lot of shit, so you won't believe me. I really wouldn't say anything else. I shouldn't be standing here all by myself, cause I'm out there. Tried to tell you that I'm out here on my own. I told you I was out there. Tried to tell you that I'm out here on my own.
Is it cheesy as hell? Sure. But it's the way that it's structured and presented that gives it a good level of depth. Another example of a song that I find interesting within this album is the song 1993, which is probably the most interesting song in this entire album, as if it carries two perspectives. Oliver's perspective and the perspective of Oliver's critics portrayed by Little Ricky CR3. And before you ask, I don't know who the fuck that is. It's a fucking alien. Like, you tell me. Like, it's probably just Oliver using a fucking alien costume and using a voice changer. I don't fucking know. With Oliver's verse, he explains his worries of his success being created not by himself but by others, or his thoughts of finally letting the turbo persona go.
Don't pretend to someone else. Maybe you should be yourself. You made your life up to somebody else. Why can't you just be yourself? No luck, good chance you'll fall. No guarantee, stop acting cheap. It was never enough at all.
And then we have the verse with Little Ricky, who, like I mentioned before, plays the role of Oliver's critics, mainly mentioning how thanks to him playing his persona, he's quote-unquote hiding who he really is, which is an interesting perspective to have.
See your soul, if you're dead inside, let me check your pulse. You should probably go get help. You don't really look like yourself. I wanna see your soul when your breathing stops, so let me check your pulse. Bigger than me, flatline when I go to sleep.
And that's some of the few examples I pointed out. If you listen to the rest of the album, you'll be able to find some of the themes I mentioned a while back, with some of my favorite songs being Miracle Man, Alien Boy, Hurt, Bury Me Alive, and the final song of the album, I'm Gone, being a specific highlight, as it feels like a proper conclusion to Oliver's career as a musician, while leaving it open-ended that maybe he'll one day come back from retirement. So with everything that I said that was positive, of course there are things that I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of. For one, while I did think that Oliver did a great job expanding on the themes he implemented, I wish there was more of it to really appreciate. Miracle Man was one of my favorite songs from his album for a very long time, but after listening to it again and again for this video, while I still love it, I can't say I was disappointed with how short it ended up being. Like, for Christ's sake, it's literally the second shortest song in the album, which is a shame because, like I said, it's one of my favorite songs on the entire album. There are songs here and there that I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of either, those being the aforementioned Introspection and Waste My Time, and the reason why is mainly because of the voice delivery in both songs. They sounded so weird, and in the case of Waste My Time, it feels like it's trying so hard to be different from other songs, but it just ends up sounding like gibberish. But my least favorite songs from this actually don't come from the normal version of this album, but instead come from the deluxe version. Like, what the fuck happened in the deluxe version? Because 70% of the new songs just feel really mediocre or just plain bad, while the other 30% are just okay, or just like average, I guess. But overall, I really like this album. Not only is it very catchy, but it's very well written, as it opens up a lot of potential of what to expect from Oliver in the future, if he ends up making more music instead of retiring. Speaking of not retiring, I mean, if you couldn't tell, Oliver wasn't exactly done with music. So after the original release of Ugly is Beautiful, Oliver would release 3 remix singles as well as his song Out of Ordinary, and on February 2021, he would announce a deluxe version of Ugly is Beautiful, which I already discussed. But later on in 2021, he would collaborate with the Russian band Little Big with an EP called Welcome to the Internet, and in full honesty, it's not great. Instrumental wise, it's not really that good, for one exception, that being the Internet song. But other than that, it sounds like they put on the most annoying ass beats imaginable and they just said, hey, let's make that a song. and that's literally an EP. Like, that's literally the entire EP. Also, for an EP that's basically about satirizing the internet, it manages to make the most bare bones and stereotypical jokes you can expect about the internet, which isn't saying much because the only song from the EP to do that is literally the first one. Like, I literally have no fucking idea what the other songs are supposed to be about. But to really summarize this EP in a few words, I mean, I don't know, just imagine Bo Burnham's song, which is coincidentally also called Welcome to the Internet, but expanded into a 4-song project with one of them being really mediocre as fuck, while the rest of them are just really bad. Yeah, that's really about it. It's just not good.
I'm about to hit that coochie, play you like Tamaguchi.
That shit is fucking trash, dog.
In June 27, 2021, Oliver would announce that he'd be coming out of retirement to release one final album called Cowboy Tears, and in January 2022, he would release a full music video for his song Cowboys Don't Cry as a teaser for the full album, which would release a month later on February 18, 2022, receiving mainly negative reaction from critics, calling it Oliver's worst project yet. And although I don't think it's as bad as Welcome to the Internet, but that, you know, that's just kind of a 50-50 project that both Oliver and Little Tree were part of. But in terms of his solo projects, I still didn't agree with that sentiment, but unfortunately I really didn't like this. I fully respect Oliver both for the way he marketed this album. In fact, I feel like Oliver's a fucking genius when it comes to marketing overall, and as an artist for branching out as a completely new genre, in this case that being country music. And my bias against country music aside, I was willing to give this album a chance because of how much I really liked Ugly Is Beautiful. But sadly, I'm sorry, this wasn't it, Chief. My biggest problem with this album is that it just feels really generic and honestly pretty boring. It actually kind of reminded me why I don't like country music in the first place, all things considered. The instrumentals sounded really boring and uninspired, which is a rare case for Oliver, since even in his weaker songs from Ugly Is Beautiful, I can at least admit that the instrumentals were a bop, but even then, that's not the case here. However, probably the worst part about this album is the vocal inflection from Oliver himself, and nowhere is that more apparent than in the songs California and Playing With Fire. Dear God, these songs are just rough to listen to. But maybe you're thinking to yourself, maybe just focus talking about the themes represented in this album, and sorry to tell you, Chief, there's not really much here to talk about. Instead, it tries to focus more on the comedy aspect, but even then, I'd say it falls flat because it's not really that funny. The biggest attempt of, like, trying to be funny is in the song Cigarettes, and just like with Welcome to the Internet, he just says the most bare bones and overused jokes about cigarettes.
Walking out the house with a pack up in my hand, 10 cigarettes for lunch, 10 for dinner, goddamn. I really wanna stop, but I'm feeling like I can't. I smoke more cigs than the Marlboro Man. 20 cigarettes in my mouth at once, light the whole pack up, I smoke them by the bunch. Fill me up with cancer, baby I can't stop, smoke them when I want, lately that's a lot.
To quickly sidetrack back to the song 1993 again, a remark that was hinted in Little Ricky's verse was how at times Oliver played it too safe, and at times playing it safe works out in the long run. But this album, while its attempts at heading into a new genre is there, what it does do is plays it really safe and has not that many risks taken. Really, the best way I could really talk about this album and just summarize it is just like with one of the names of the album. It's a swing and a miss, which is a shame because this really did have a lot of potential. And with that, we concluded our journey going over Oliver Tree's legacy. Although Cowboy Tears is labeled as his last album, hell, even doing a tour called One Last Ride, if there's anything predictable when it comes to Oliver, it's his unpredictability, so who knows what he'll be doing next. By the time I'm writing and recording this script, his last released song was a song called Placeholder, which came out 2 months ago after his other song, I Hate You, which could mean one of two things. They could either be singles, or the most likely option, that being that there are plans to making a deluxe version of Cowboy Tears. Whatever the case ends up being, while the road at the end was pretty rocky, I honestly really enjoyed myself listening to Oliver's music for this video and diving into the rabbit hole of his past, and I've come to respect him a lot, not only as a musician but as an artist as well. Whatever types of shenanigans Oliver ends up doing in the future, hopefully he does well for himself, and I wish him the best of luck. Anyways, this has been Manuel D, and originally the ending skit for this video was supposed to be about how Oliver inspired me to get into scootering, but then I realized one thing. I'm dead, and I have no legs, meaning that I can't really do some scootering. So, sorry to disappoint you on that aspect. However, fear not, because I actually did come up with a plan B. That being what this video was truly about. Why Drake is one of the greatest rappers in our entire generation.